Hey everybody, Justin here, and quickly I'm going to try to summarize and share my story with you, I'm really excited to. I love getting a chance to share my testimony, so here it goes. Like a lot of people in this area, I was blessed to be in church all the time, whether it was my mom taking me or going wherever it was that my grandfather was pastoring at the time. I remember always being in church growing up. And it was in 8th grade, about 2005, in January, where, a couple of weeks I'd been wrestling with the idea. I knew that I knew a lot about Jesus, obviously growing up and being in church all the time. I could tell you all about him, but, I knew that I hadn't accepted him, and I wanted to make that choice and decision. So Brother Kevin Bullock was the pastor, and I remember going up front, kind of nervous, really emotional, and just, listening to the congregation saying, I've decided to follow Jesus. And, I'll never forget that day. Kevin talked with me for a pretty good while just about what I had done and things. And, that was in 8th grade. So, about 2 years later, I'm kind of falling out of church, not really doing anything to help grow myself. Basically just the only Bible I'm getting was, just from church, from youth, from Sunday school, not much at all. And also just, as a teenager, we all know, you're emotional, you're going through a lot of changes. And I just had a lot of questions. My parents weren't together very long after I was born. Just a lot of drama there. I had a lot of questions. I'd heard a lot of stories from both sides and was just really confused. And that, with a mixture of other things, really just kind of got me frustrated and really got me doubting my faith. And, so from about my junior year of high school until, probably 2012, I had just completely stepped out of church. Really was looking at other religions, even other philosophies, trying to make sense of things. And, nothing really seemed to me to make any sense or to really, I poked a lot of holes in other religions and ideas of things. And about 2012, Caleb Holder came to me, introduced me to this guy named Chris Craig. Chris Craig is an outstanding dude. Chris, if you see this, thank you so much. I don't even think you know just how you've helped me. So shout out, Chris. But we were introduced to Chris Craig, started playing a little bit of music at the Source, which is what they used to do here at First Baptist in the old sanctuary. Chris was just an awesome dude. Really just one of the first people our age that I ever saw not only walk it and know it, but live it. And just really, helped us along the way. And with that, I think Caleb and I actually became members of FBC on the same day in 2013. And, that same year I was asked to go to Orange Beach for a youth camp. And I was like, yeah, like I'll go. I hadn't been to camp since I was a youth. So I went, and Christian Stanfield's leading worship. It's been an awesome camp. And I remember at one point during the worship service, I was praying and I looked at Chris Craig and I was like, dude, something about this feels right. And obviously, not just the fact that I was back in church and had been for a little while, but just I could really feel the pull to being pulled into ministry, the call. And it really scared me. And from about, 2013 until obviously 2018, when I started here at First Baptist, I ran from that calling. I found myself in a relationship. I got a job, was promoted. Everything seemed to be going really well. And about 2017, my grandfather passed away. And I realized a lot of things when he passed away. My grandfather was like a dad to me. And they always say, I've heard people say this, you're not a man until you've lost your father. And I realized a lot of things when I lost my grandfather. I thought, even up until his last breaths and the conversations with him on the bed, he was still faithful. He had spent all of his life almost in ministry. And even when he retired from pastoring, he went on to work at group homes. And, I was like, wow, this, there truly has to be something, because he dedicated his whole life to that. And I remember telling my grandfather, while he was laying on the bed and he could still have a conversation, I said, I think I'm gonna accept the call. Like I can't run from the ministry call anymore. And he and I had talked about it, and even prior to that. So I told him that, eventually my grandfather goes on to be with the Lord. And as things progress, that summer and fall passed by, and that spring, I'd been in a relationship for years, thought she was the person I should marry, really went about things the wrong way. And, I had no peace about the relationship anymore. And obviously it wouldn't have been good for me. It wouldn't have been good for her. So, we broke things off. I started, even though I'd just taken a promotion, it was literally weeks after my grandfather had died. I'd taken a promotion, and for those couple of months, I'd been at my new job, and was just not happy with that either. Even though I was living the American dream, making more money. At one point, even my store manager pulled me into his office, and he said, you don't seem happy. You don't seem like yourself. Like, are you sure this is what you're supposed to be doing? And I said, dude, I don't know. And Travis looked at me, my store manager, and said, when I see you, I see somebody that should be a pastor. Oh, here we go again. I'm already, I've accepted the call, but I was like, wow, like what a thing to happen. So I continue, the relationship's over. I'm under a lot of mental, emotional stress. I'm just trying to get my mind right. And I get the call one day while I'm sitting at Lowe's on a forklift, and they're like, hey, we would like somebody to come in part-time and help out. And I remember being like, wow, just a couple days before that, I wanted to accept the call to ministry. I'd had for the last couple months, since my grandfather had passed away, but I just had no idea where to start, didn't have a degree. All of a sudden one day I'm here at Lowe's, and I just get a phone call, and they knew that I didn't have a degree. And, they were like, yeah, we'll help you with school and everything. And I just remember being like so floored, like, wow, God really can do anything. And, although in a way it was a season of a new beginning and a lot of things I was leaving behind, and, in some ways it was a low point, but on those low days where, I was like, wow, I just ended my relationship, and, my grandfather's gone. I'm about to, I'm not happy with my job. And in those lowest points, I think I saw God the most I'd ever seen him. And that actually brought me so much closer to God, because I then realized, without him, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I get the call, I accept the position, and then now here I am. It's been 2.5 years. I think this spring will be 3. And I'm still, my testimony's still rolling. I don't think anybody's testimony should ever have an ending to it. We still struggle. I still have days where I'm like, God, like, I need you today. You're going to have to do something, because I can't. But I've learned so much, even in these 2.5 years of ministry, and my testimony is still continued to grow. I've learned to trust the Lord. I've learned to accept the fact that, I can't do everything, and I'm not called to do everything. And, I really have to truly rely on Jesus, and remember to, my relationship with Jesus isn't, I always feel like some people have a relationship with Jesus almost like they believe Jesus was, but they don't believe that he still is. Well, I have a relationship with Jesus where I know that he still is, talking to him as if he's right there, because I know he is. And if I could just encourage you with any verse, this bit of scripture from Galatians really changed my whole outlook on things, because I used to really struggle with almost like a performance type faith. Like, I had to do things to make God happy and get God's favor. I had to do things in order to feel secure about my salvation. Even though I read the scripture, even though I knew my salvation depended on what Jesus did and nothing else, it still would just tear me up. And, one day I'd seen this scripture before, these 2 verses. It's in Galatians chapter 4. I'd seen this, who knows how many times. And one day, and I'm sure it's happened with you all, it clicked. I was like, oh, okay. And it's Galatians 4, 6 and 7. And it says, because you are his sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father, which, Abba, Father would be like a kid crying out to his dad. And then in verse 7 it says, so you are no longer a slave, but God's child, and since you are his child, God has made you also an heir. So when I saw this, I thought, I'm God's child. I'm not just a henchman. I'm not just somebody down here that God's watching saying, okay, did that right, did that wrong. I'm his child. And I don't have kids. I can say I don't know a lot about parenting, but I see, Caleb, I see other friends, my own family, my niece and nephew, and how they're parented. And I see these things and I realize, kids are disciplined, they're corrected, they're loved. They become such a huge part of the lives of the parents, and they're such a blessing. And when I realized that I was God's child, that really changed things, because I realized, like, Justin, you're tripping out about, thinking that you're good enough or you're not good enough. No parent's going to take their child when they mess up and drop them off at Walmart and just drive away and say, see you later, bud, you messed up, bye. Or, get out of my house, like, you're done, like, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And I realized, I'm God's child. So God's not going to do that either. God's love's far beyond anything that we know as humans anyways. So I was really able to rest in that. And it really puts to rest a lot of the anxiety that comes from just, trying to be perfect, even though we don't have to be. Good things should flow out of us if we're letting Jesus live through us, more so than we are trying to live for Jesus. So I just encourage you all, stay in the Word. Don't just rely on us to feed you. I would love to talk, love to chat with you if you ever need anything, and I know the rest of the staff feels the same way. But, I also just encourage you, you've got to read Scripture for yourself, you've got to pray, and you have to have that personal connection with Jesus. So, hopefully this was helpful. We love you guys, we miss you. We're going to get through this together. Try not to get too discouraged by what you see. There's always good things happening. And remember this too, you may not see this on the news, but God's never sleeping. God's not resting. God's always working, always on the move. And with God, all things are possible. So, love y'all. Peace.